Hey there! Today we are going to talk about Acts of Violet by Margarita Montimore. This book is about magic. So Acts of Violet is about this magician from the 90s who was kind of like a feminist icon. They say she was part gutter punk, part diva, and her final act, she disappeared and was never heard from again. 10 years later, people are still just as obsessed with her as they were when she was around. It's kind of a whole mystery of her disappearance. Did she do it on purpose? Was she kidnapped? Is it foul play? No one really knows. As the 10th anniversary of her disappearance draws near, her sister still lives in the town where they grew up. It's her sister and her husband Gabriel and their daughter Quinn. Sister's name is Sasha. She has a lot of just emotional baggage from, her relationship with her sister over the years, dealing with that, dealing with the anniversary of the disappearance and how people have Violet up on a pedestal when maybe she wasn't the greatest, person ever. Because you don't always see the behind closed doors crap that goes on in people's lives and all that stuff. This book kind of bounces around too. You go through a lot of there's emails and letters, so some of the format is that in the book. And then as this anniversary of the 10 years draws near, there's this podcast that's gaining steam. It's called the Strange Exits podcast. This first season is solely dedicated to Violet Volk, the magician. And so the guy who runs the podcast, Cameron Frank, he has gotten a lot of guests to come on that were in Violet's life and have cycled through ex-husbands and photographers and people that had connections who are the first magician who she was kind of his protege, Ace Morgan. And so all these people come on the podcast and, you have Violet's sister and her family trying to deal with all this. And there's all this other crap too. There's this hashtag Violet is back that's people dressing up as her and pretending to be her. So this is affecting the family and the sister, and it weighs more heavily on her shoulders than I think she even realized. So the whole thing is, what is the mystery behind this disappearance? And it's kind of cool. This book's super weird, so I could see how some people, it might be too out there for them, because it pulls in a lot of stuff that is very paranormal and very unknown and weird. I mean, they talk about, as it gets into it, some of the stuff that Violet was interested in and what she was reading was interdimensional stuff, how you raise your energy to possibly pop into other dimensions, and string theory. They talk about the MK Ultra experiments. There's mention of Uri Geller, the spoon bender. Well, he was famous for other things besides bending spoons. MK Ultra too, that was the experiments the government did with LSD back in the day, or the CIA, sorry. There's just a lot of weird elements to this. So then it seems maybe it could be more of a supernatural thing of where Violet disappeared. And then there's always the controversy was Violet Volk actually magic? Because she would just do these wild magical acts and things that just blew people's minds. As it gets closer to the date, they're all is she going to show up at the 10th year anniversary vigil? Because the town holds a vigil every year. And the sister, she owns a salon in town, and she's got to deal with people coming in and talking about Violet and how amazing Violet was and this, that, and the other. And Violet was kind of a crappy person. She seemed very selfish. She was very competitive. She was not the nicest person. And her sister Sasha is just she keeps a lot of this inside. And that Cameron Frank of the Strange Exits podcast, the pinnacle of his career will basically be if he can get the interview with her. And he keeps badgering her, and she's no, because she's kind of afraid she'll just explode with all the horrible things that Violet did. The whole story is kind of based around will or will not Violet reappear, or what actually happened to Violet. The way the story's told, the way you go through the podcast episodes, and you read letters old letters from when they were kids, Violet and Sasha, up until closer to when she disappeared, and the relationship with her and her sister with Sasha's daughter Quinn, and her husband Gabriel, they were all friends with growing up, and just the dynamics between them and all that. And I really love this book. I thought it was pretty great. It might be a little too weird woo-woo, but I liked it a lot. I gave this book 4 stars. I enjoyed the writing. I thought it was interesting how they did have, like, you know, the podcast episodes and then the letters and the emails interspersed in there. And I didn't feel like it broke up the story at all. I felt it added to it and kind of like, you know, it ties it all together. And then you like can see into the past, like little portals with these different, you know, sound bites of, you get a little more insight. And it was pretty fascinating. And then, you know, what happens at the end? Do they ever find her? Do they find out what happened to her? What is the culmination of all this? I liked how it was wrapped up. I liked the inner turmoil of the sister relationship. I've never read anything by this author before. Acts of Violet by Margarita Montimore was a magical read. If you like weird and strange books, the next video coming up will be another weird and strange book. So stick around, check it out. If you had fun hanging out, boop that like button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.